Hey everyone, and welcome to my review for House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 8, The Treasons at Tumbleton. And oh boy was this a chaotic but pretty good final episode for the season. We finally got the Dragonseed betrayal and Battle of Tumbleton. And while I didn't think it was as good as what happened in the books, it was still a fun, fast-paced, and action-packed episode that finally got the story moving forward. So let's get right into the positives, starting with Baela confronting Rhaenyra about freeing Corlys Velaryon from the Greens. It was nice seeing how loyal she is to her grandfather, and I agree that the Queen has been misusing Adam and Baela. But at the same time, I think Rhaenyra was right not to risk her plans to save Corlys. Maybe she could have put more effort into ensuring his rescue was one of her army's priorities when they attacked Tumbleton, but there's only so much she can do since she has to look at the big picture. And it was kind of crazy to me that Baela would blame the Queen for what happened to Rhaena when she was given the very important job of taking care of her kids, some dragon eggs, and young dragons, and she selfishly abandoned that duty to claim a wild dragon and completely mess everything up. Next, I'll mention the Ulf Tavern scene where he's bragging about his prowess and how he'll win the battle only to drink himself into a stupor, pass out, and miss most of the fighting. This was pretty funny, and kind of similar to what happened in the books, but also a bit different. It kind of seems like the show combined some parts of the first and second battles of Tumbleton, but not entirely. Much of the battle was closer to what happened in the first battle, but in the books, Ulf sleeping through the fighting actually happened in the second battle of Tumbleton, and it's one of the reasons he survived. Then there's Alan of Hall stepping up to replace Corlys Velaryon and prove himself to the Queen. Given that Rhaenyra is now spiraling and her continued reign is uncertain, maybe it's not the best time to attach himself to her. And also, it's a bit of a shame he's not more concerned about Corlys like Adam and Baela. But even so, I love how Alan acted during this episode, showing some real agency and confidence as he uses the chaos of war to climb the ladder of power. I may not agree with all his decisions, but Alan is becoming one of the more interesting characters to watch, and since his story has greatly diverged from his role in the books, I'm genuinely fascinated to see where he's headed. Moving on, I like that Mysaria was relieved of her position as she wasn't very useful anymore, and much of her advice actually worked out poorly in the long run. So this felt like Rhaenyra was properly taking charge and ridding herself of an unnecessary burden. Lately, Mysaria's character has really dragged down the story, but now that she escaped into the city, she's being set up as an adversary to Rhaenyra, which, spoiler alert here, to me means next season she'll fulfill the role of one of the peasant leaders during the Moon of the Three Kings, like maybe the shepherd who denounces the Targaryens and gathers followers to oppose them, or the prostitute Essie or her lover Sylvena Sand, who raise up a new king and gather followers to claim the throne. Whatever they do, it seems like her character now has the potential to be interesting again. The last positive I'll mention here is Hugh Hammer disobeying orders to join the Ground Army and attempt to rescue his wife, only to find her dead, leading to his utter devastation and nicely setting up how unpredictable his response will be. Again, his storyline is very different to what it was in the books, but this is another successful moment for the show where they've made me look forward to seeing what will happen with his character. Moving on to the negatives, I'll start with Rhaenyra crying about Aegon's return. For the first time in a long time, I actually really liked Rhaenyra throughout much of this episode, which I'll talk about later. But this first scene was more of the same, where she projects profound weakness, crying and collapsing in her husband's arms, instead of projecting strength and confidence, as she considers her next move. In the books, there's a moment where after a long absence, Aegon re-emerges and confronts Rhaenyra, but rather than fall to pieces, she responds with dignity and scorn, saying, "Dear brother, I had hoped that you were dead." This is the Rhaenyra I wanted to see, but luckily, later in the episode, I think we finally started to see it. Next, there's Ormond knighting Daeron Targaryen. The scene itself was fine, but I really think they messed up by not including all of Daeron's accomplishments up to this point. In the books, by the first Battle of Tumbleton, Daeron was a seasoned warrior who won the Battle of the Honeywine, the Siege of Longtable, and Sack of Bitterbridge. In the show, they've given him nothing to do and even missed the chance to have him participate in this battle, which is a shame. Another disappointing use of a character was what they did with Helaena this season. I really liked the portrayal of the character, and I appreciate that she took her own life like in the books, but I really feel like her descent into depression and madness could have been done better. In the books, it's the events of Blood and Cheese coupled with the death of her youngest son Maelor that she can't recover from. Since they made her pregnant in the show, and she really seemed to care for the baby, I thought they would have something happen where she lost the child and that sent her over the edge. But instead, the baby seemed to not matter anymore as she stopped eating, which hurt the unborn child, and then ended her life, which also ended the child's life. I get that she was miserable and saw little hope for the future, but I don't think the pregnancy storyline was used to its full potential, and her death ended up feeling a bit hollow to me. So now let's get into my top 5 moments of the night, starting with Aegon confronting his brother Aemond at Harrenhal. This was a pretty hilarious scene, as Aegon's really come a long way and is becoming more and more interesting with each passing episode. Aemond, on the other hand, has regressed and is finally accepting his place as the younger brother. Although I would have liked to see Aegon dish out some revenge, I think it was the better choice to force his brother to earn forgiveness by helping him take back the throne. Very fun scene. Moving on to the number 4 spot, I went with almost everything related to Rhaenyra Targaryen. I've already mentioned that I didn't like her opening scene, but after that, Rhaenyra finally started to transform into the stern, confident, and sometimes cruel leader she was meant to be. Now, don't get me wrong, I think some of her decisions this episode were terrible, like killing the High Septon and giving a crazed speech to the people about a prophecy no one will understand, where she even starts speaking in a language they won't understand. Crazy stuff. But at least she's finally making serious decisions and being proactive, which makes her a far more interesting character to watch. I never needed her to be a good ruler. I just needed her to be strong and confident in her decisions, even if we know they're wrong. Plus, I have to say, she looked absolutely badass in that armor. For the third best moment, I chose the new lore we got about Alice Rivers at Harrenhal. This was pretty damn interesting, I have to say, and does make sense given what we know from the books. According to Grand Maester Munkin and Septon Eustace, Alice was the bastard daughter of Lord Lionel Strong. However, Mushroom said she was actually much older, and served as a wet nurse to Lionel and later his sons. She was at least 40 when the Dance of the Dragons broke out, but looked unusually young for her age. Said to be a woods witch skilled in potions, she never successfully gave birth, instead suffering numerous miscarriages, and so served as a wet nurse for many of the children born in Harrenhal. Now, according to the show, we can expand upon that lore, as Alice claims to have been the bedmate of Harren the Black, the king of the Isles and Rivers, who was killed by Aegon the Conqueror during the Targaryen conquest of the Seven Kingdoms. Though most believed Harren's family was wiped out, Alice and her newborn son survived, but the child was badly burned, and so she turned to dark and ancient magics to try to keep him alive. Though she ultimately failed and the child died anyway, her foray into dark magics cursed her to live on indefinitely, stripped her of her name, title, and castle, forced to serve every lord of Harrenhal who came after. Since she claims to have been stripped of title and castle, this suggests she was actually Harren's wife, and the queen of the Isles and Rivers, and is now well over 130 years old. This was awesome, and some of the best new lore the show has ever produced. And while we can't say it's canon to the books, since as far as I know, George R.R. Martin hasn't agreed that it's true, for me it fits well with what we know already and would be an absolutely fascinating addition to the lore. At the number 2 spot, I went with the Hightower scenes, starting with Ormond proving to be a complete psycho by using kids as human shields, though I have to say it definitely had some strategic advantages, as not only might it make the enemy pause and reconsider their tactics, but even if the battle was lost, the Greens could later denounce Rhaenyra's forces as child killers, spinning a story that they targeted and massacred children. I also like that Daeron wanted to fight and really wished they'd let him, and enjoyed seeing Gwaine try and fail to negotiate for peace. It really felt like all the Hightowers were doing what they could to accomplish their individual goals. And now, for the best moment of the episode, I went with the entire Battle of Tumbleton. Okay, so let's start with the necessary caveats. Yes, this was completely different from the books, where it was actually the Blacks defending Tumbleton and the Greens attacking. And yes, I do think the book version was better. But still, by show standards, this battle was pretty awesome and gave some really fun and fascinating scenes. It was nice getting a bit more of Black Alley in the Rivermen's strategy meeting, and I loved hearing Daemon mention Sir Garibald Grey, as he was an important leader in the book battle. I also loved seeing the Winter Wolves on full display, with Roddy taking out everyone in his path to reach Ormond Hightower. I do wish their death scene was handled a bit more seriously though, as Ormond losing the fight because he gagged was pretty silly, since in the books, Roddy took out Ormond and his cousin Brynden with only one arm. But it was still pretty fun watching Roddy defeat Ormond and welcome death by dragonfire. The Ulf betrayal was pretty funny and crazy as he attacked both sides, which definitely did not happen in the books, but does make me wonder what'll happen to his character going forward. And of course I have to mention the epic duel between an older Daemon Targaryen who got absolutely pummeled by the younger Jon Roxton, and likely would have died if they hadn't been separated. This battle wasn't perfect, but it was pretty fun to watch and definitely one of the highlights of the past 2 seasons. Now, for the best kill of the episode, I went with the death of Ormond Hightower and Roderick Dustin, which, as I mentioned, could have been done better, but was still a pretty awesome moment as Roddy stabbed the enemy leader and joyfully awaited death by dragonfire. And for the best line of the night, I'll again stick with Roddy the Ruin, as I loved his attitude during the strategy meeting, where he hears Daemon issue an order not to die before opening the gate, and so flippantly responds, "Aye, gate open, then die." So that's it for my review of House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 8, The Treasons at Tumbleton. This really was a nice way to end the season and actually made me curious about where certain storylines are going. Compared to much of the season, this episode was definitely more interesting and fun to watch, so I'm gonna go with a strong 9 out of 10. As for the season as a whole, it started and ended strong, but much of the middle was slow and tough to get through, so I'm gonna go with a 6.5 out of 10 overall. But what did you all think? How did you like the Battle of Tumbleton? What do you think of the new lore for Alice Rivers? And how do you feel about the season as a whole? Let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, be sure to check out my Prelude to the House of the Dragon Season 3 video, along with my other A Song of Ice and Fire videos like the complete histories of Hugh Hammer and Wolf the White, Criston Cole, the first Battle of Tumbleton, and the second Battle of Tumbleton. I'll link all those and more in the comments below, and although this was my last review for the season, I'll continue to post a few more weeks of Dance of the Dragons related content, including a complete recap of Season 3. So for now, I want to thank you all for joining me for another season of House of the Dragon, and I hope to see you next time. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Tamika the Black Wolf, Drac the Bronze, Delacruz the Freed, and Kristen Green Eyes of the Company of the Cat. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and click on the links below, or else go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can gain early access to videos and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.